Welcome in to the Pay Dirt Profile Podcast. We have a mini-sode. We're going to be doing some player profiles and some breakdowns of some of the upcoming 2020 NFL prospects. I'm here with Kyle. The rest of the other guys can't make it with us this time, but if you're listening, you can find us at the Sounder app. You can also find us Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Castbox, Spotify. And if you want to bring us in somewhere else, then let us know. You can find us on all social medias at the Pay Dirt Profile and our Facebook group, the Pay Dirt Profile Podcast. So we're going to be doing some reviews on certain positions, and we'll be back with you as soon as possible to bring you some additional ones. Welcome back. We're here talking about the Baylor receiver, Denzel Mims. Denzel Mims has had quite a meteoric rise since he left college. He performed in the Senior Bowl and had a pretty standout performance in one-on-ones and played solidly in the game. He also had a big splash by performing really well at the Combine. He's a senior receiver, comes in at about 6'3", about 205 pounds. At Baylor, they had a pretty strong season. Passing offense had taken a lot of shots vertically. We're checking in his game against Georgia right now to give you a little bit of background of what we're looking at as we kind of watch him. Thought he was a solid prospect, a guy who's closer to a number 2 type of receiver. I comped him to Chris Godwin. I thought that he definitely could win vertically, and he could do some decent things. His route tree is okay. I didn't see him being like super nuanced, but he can get open. He can make plays. He has a lot of back shoulder throws or back shoulder catches. What did you see from him in your evaluation, Kyle?
So, like you said, we're watching him against Georgia. I watched both against Oklahoma and his game against Texas. And what you see, he does have production, right? So he has 3 years. His last 3 years, he totaled 28 touchdowns as their leading red zone guy and their best receiver, basically. Two 1,000-yard seasons. And you watch him, and he's going to have a spot in the NFL, right? He's probably a top 6 or 8 receiver in the draft, depending on how you want to designate some of these players. Mm-hmm. Your comp was
Chris Godwin.
Chris Godwin. I don't know if he's as refined as that. Right. Some similar skill sets. I thought maybe a Robbie Anderson with better hands, because I think that's the role he's going to fit in the league.
Like that's vertical stretch.
Right, yeah. I didn't see a ton of routes out of him, but like you said, he went 4.38 in the 40, and you had already said he's going to be a field stretcher. I think he's a guy who's going to have to win running by people. Mm-hmm. A team that can utilize him running some posts, I think, is going to be nice. When you go post wheel or post corner type stuff. I think that's where he can win over the top of safeties for sure. But I didn't see a lot of nuance to what he does. You see a ton of back shoulders, and I think his best attribute is his vision when the ball is in the air. Mm-hmm. He really finds it well, especially on contested catches. He's really good on back shoulders, really good at high point, red zone type of stuff. You can see some drops occasionally in the middle of the field, but you don't see him do a lot. Like we talk about a limited route tree, some of the top guys, they do a lot of different stuff.
Right.
The top 2 especially. And I don't think he does that. And if you watch a lot of their game planning at Baylor, he's catching them off of RPO stuff. RPO with like a glance would be five-step post, basically like a short post or a deep slant. Mm-hmm. I think that's where they were really good with him. But, speed is where he makes his money. And then so I hadn't put my actual – I thought Robbie Anderson a little, but the actual comp I had here, and I was going to read you a kind of a prospect profile from a couple years ago,
Okay.
and then see if this is a good comparison to him.
From NFL?
This is from an NFL, and I think it ended up being Bucky Brooks or Lance Zierlein.
Okay.
So tall with arm length to match, has room to add more muscle and strength, long strider who, if unaccosted or pressed, can eat up cushion and work over the top.
Mm-hmm.
Catches away from his body with good extension, long arms, have a nice catch radius.
And on that, where you're reading that, he has a big-time contested catch ball caught away from his body. So
become a red zone monster, has the opportunity to. Weaknesses, route strength is below average, can be knocked off course in timing routes.
Yep.
Could struggle to uncover against bump and run. So that's a comp of a guy who's currently in the NFL, and metric size-wise was very close out of the combine. 6'4", 200 was this guy.
Okay.
So it says, bottom line, will be a height, weight, speed prospect headed to the NFL. Could be targeted by teams looking for a field stretcher with size who can become a potential matchup problem in the red zone.
Was this Devontae Parker?
Close. Same division. All right.
6'4".
Kenny Galladay. So you start thinking about, well, that's not the Kenny Galladay I know, right?
No.
He's become a much better receiver.
Yeah.
But then you see, you put on some size, refine some route running stuff, and if you watch Kenny Galladay at Northern Illinois, they look the same. They're running around the same. They're winning with some speed. And, if that's what he becomes, he should probably be higher in the draft.
Yeah, I think so. Because I think when you look at the teams and they do this is the redraft of the whatever after they see the prospects and how they turn out. I think Kenny Galladay is definitely a much higher sought after prospect after that.
And I think I don't know where you think he fits in the NFL. What team would be good for him or teams? But I do see if he's given it some time to develop. Kenny Galladay is 5-6 years in the league, right?
Yeah.
If given time, you could see some of that, especially if you refine some route running stuff.
So I think that, oddly enough, putting him on the Lions would be a solid place for him, just because we don't know how long Marvin Jones is going to be there, and with the injuries that he has, and they definitely do like that verticality. I could see. It's kind of one of those cop-out kind of things, like when you see a Lynn Bowden and you say he reminds you of Randall Cobb.
Right, same school.
Same school. When you see how he plays, you mentioned that he was similar to Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson was a Temple guy, and
Matt Rule was there.
Yeah, and Matt Rule being at Baylor, there's a lot of people who are thinking that Denzel Mims could be the receiver that they take in the second round.
Early second.
I think that there is some skill overlap there, but I do think he can win as a go-to X receiver more than Robbie Anderson could.
Definitely.
So I think that would be, as much as that's kind of like a lazy kind of eval, just saying this is the coach, so I think that there's ties there. I think that definitely could be something that they're looking to do. And I know that, a team before they got DeAndre Hopkins, I was looking at a team
Texans.
like the Cardinals. And now the Texans, I think, could fit, just because what Hopkins does well is something that I think is coveted in the league, and I think they kind of win similar ways. So before I was saying, they took Hakeem Butler. I don't know how high they are on him, so maybe Mims could be a player there. But now that they've traded Hopkins, that type of player is very, very necessary potentially for the Texans.
Right, and so I'm going to throw this one too. I think that he's probably going to start getting some looks late first round. Hopefully not too early in the first round. Early second would probably be where he's going to end up.
Right.
Packers at 20 or at 30. Packers at 30. So I know we've talked about on some other podcasts how they like these big receivers.
Right.
So he would fit that, but I think his difference between some of those guys that they've already got is he can run. and which is what they really need. They got too many big body underneath guys.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you think though that he would really offer that much different than what they have in like Lazard?
But he's much faster than Lazard.
Right.
He's a different type of player.
Yeah, or Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Right.
You know, he's a 4'3" guy, 6'3". Like,
right.
Maybe is he more refined than him? Because that's why Valdez-Scantling has not turned into something, because he hasn't really gotten that nuanced route running to try to make him somebody more than just a vertical guy. And
that could be why I was feeling like the Packers, because he feels like a Packers guy.
Right.
Just a little faster, I thought, than some of those guys. But you could see Packers, and then, like you said, early in the second, you could be looking at Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Detroit is there. I don't think they need another receiver. But
yeah, right now, I mean, I think that they would have to, look to maybe trade Marvin Jones, or, kind of have him as like not a red shirt, because they're still going to be able to utilize him. But if you have Jones and you have Golladay on the outside, you naturally are going to need Mims to learn a little bit more about how to play in the slot. Maybe he can get.
He just didn't do it. Roles. He didn't do enough of that at all.
Yeah. So like, if you put him on a offense where, hey, when you are able to be put in this position, we know you can win this way. Right. But while we have Golladay and Jones, we want you to learn something else. So if one of them gets hurt, or we move on for one of them.
Which they probably will have to.
Exactly.
They're both going to command too much money.
Right. Like, you can't keep them both there. So if this year we let you sit, use you sparingly, Danny Amendola is there, so you could probably learn a little bit about playing from the slot and different releases from a shorter guy who's been there and done it. And then, next year, let Danny Amendola go. Maybe that's his one big slot year, and then after that, Marvin Jones is gone, and you have Mims and Golladay as your two.
Right.
And then you're looking at, the Chris Godwin comp. Like, Godwin was never a, slot monster or a route running monster coming out. He had good, route running ability coming out of Penn State, but, he definitely developed really well playing in the league. So then a year or two from now, you look like a Mike Evans, Chris Godwin combination over there in Detroit. Throwing the ball around with Stafford, like that might be something that works out really well.
Right. He doesn't run routes well.
Right.
You see him a lot of times. He is plastered.
Well, he pushes off of guys a whole lot, where you're not going to get away with that as much in the league, where you just get to the top of your stem and just two-hand shove a guy to get
right, and that's where he definitely is going to need some work.
Yeah.
Struggles against some physical corners who can get into him a little bit. He just doesn't separate well. Top of routes. He doesn't lose guys route running. He loses them by just being fast.
Yeah, and he's very smooth, though. So if he's running like a post, like you had said earlier, or, he could probably run it over pretty well. If he's just getting vertical, but anything that he has to, break horizontally, or, if he's running a comeback as opposed to just a back shoulder fade,
right.
Those are plays that he isn't consistently getting, his production on. Like, if you watch his games, he's catching a back shoulder, he's catching a slant, he's catching a post, he's catching something down the field, and that's basically it. Right.
He doesn't seem to sell routes all that well. It never looks like he's doing something different than he is.
Right.
But there is rooms and offenses for guys like that. So he'll find a spot. I think maybe at his best he's in number 2. A couple years down the line.
Yeah, and also you do give him just one slight kernel of a benefit of the doubt of you played at a system where that's where they asked you to do. Now, we don't want to say that, just because you weren't asked to do it, you can, but we do have to reserve the right to say there's a chance that maybe you can do that. You just weren't asked to.
Right, just like we've talked about with the quarterbacks. Yeah. Sometimes they just are not asked to play football the same way.
Right. Like Josh Allen. Nobody knew Josh Allen was the runner that Josh Allen was until he got into the league, because he wasn't asked to do that. Like, once he got into the league and he realized, like, I'm big and strong and fast, and I don't have great receivers, I need to do something to make plays. Now, all of a sudden, you see something else out of him. You're like, okay, well, this adds to his game. If I knew that this was a part of his game, I would have felt better about him being a top 10, 15 pick. So maybe he does have the ability. I mean, during during their one-on-ones, he was consistently getting open. So maybe he does have the ability to run a more nuanced route tree, but they just basically wanted you to run the Brandon Cooks or the what was it Corey Coleman routes.
Right, but what I always kind of want to go back to is like these guys have been there 3-4 years now.
Yeah.
Are the coaches not good enough to figure it out, or they just? I mean, if your best player could do different stuff,
right,
you probably would want to do it with him.
True.
Right. So maybe it's not something that they're going to do, like turn him into a slot receiver.
Right.
But like if he ran routes better, they would do more stuff with him.
Right.
That's just what I would want to go back to, or figure out how to do some more stuff with him.
Right.
Because you don't think if he was a good overrunner, they would run him on an over.
Right.
Like he's going to beat man coverage that way every time.
Right.
Any sort of zoned feel, you win.
Right.
And we just saw his first broken tackle, and we're into our second film now.
Right.
First time I've seen him make someone miss or break a tackle.
And then he limps off the field.
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, he does have good hands, so you don't have to worry about that. He does have speed and he does have size. He does have quality body control. You hope that these NFL coaches, what their jobs are to do are to coach players and to make them better. So you would hope that a coach can get with him, make him a more nuanced route runner, and have him be able to win in that regard. And if you can do that, like you said, you might be looking back and saying, maybe we should have taken this guy a little bit more higher, or a little bit higher than he's going right now.
Right.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, he'll probably end up being, like you said, a late first, early second guy. But I guess we'll just have to see. He continues to move up, so while there's not a whole lot going on, people are going to continue to look back at that combine performance and Senior Bowl performance, and who knows, by the time the draft comes here, we might see him, sneak into the first round along with those big-time other guys. So I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about some other receivers coming up here soon, but until then, we're out.